From the ashes of silence, the Keldari Dominion moved through the galaxy like a plague, consuming everything in their path. Their ships, massive, obsidian structures that seemed to devour light rather than reflect it, appeared without warning in system after system. There were no declarations of war, no demands for surrender, only silent destruction as they descended upon unsuspecting worlds. For 3 centuries, the Keldari had never known defeat. Their technology was centuries beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, their tactics brutal and efficient. They didn't conquer, they'd erased. Countless civilizations had vanished under their onslaught, reduced to nothing more than footnotes in the Dominion's relentless march across the stars. The Galactic Concord, an alliance of the 17 most powerful species in the known universe, had attempted to stand against them. Their combined fleet, nearly 10,000 ships strong, had gathered at the Arcturus Gateway, determined to make their final stand. The battle lasted less than 6 hours. When it was over, the Concord's mighty armada was nothing but debris floating in the cold vacuum of space, and the path to the core worlds lay open. Earth was among the first to fall after the Concord's defeat. Humanity, still young among the stars with colonies on only 12 worlds, had fought with unexpected ferocity. The Keldari, used to species surrendering after witnessing the fate of their neighbors, were surprised by the humans' resistance. For 2 full weeks, Earth's orbital defenses held against overwhelming odds, a record that no other world had achieved. But in the end, the result was the same. The Keldari bombardment reduced Earth's surface to molten slag. The colony worlds, cut off from the homeworld and each other, fell one by one in the following months. The official Dominion records listed humans as extinct, a minor species that had shown unusual resilience, but ultimately proven as fragile as all the others. The Keldari moved on, their eyes set on richer prizes. Humanity became just another name on the long list of civilizations erased from existence by the unstoppable Dominion. But deep in the Kuiper belt of a forgotten star system called Barnard's Star, in the abandoned mining colony of Outpost Omega, humanity still lived. The outpost had been designed to be self-sufficient, hidden within the hollowed-out core of a large asteroid. Originally built to mine rare minerals, it had been abandoned decades before the invasion when the veins ran dry. Only a small maintenance crew had remained to oversee the automated systems. When news of Earth's fall reached them, instead of fleeing, they had shut down all transmissions, powered down everything except essential life support, and waited in darkness. More survivors arrived over the years, refugees from fallen colonies, crews of ships that had escaped the slaughter, soldiers who had nowhere else to go. By the time 30 years had passed, Outpost Omega housed nearly 40,000 humans, all that remained of a species that had once numbered in the billions. They lived in silence, in darkness, in hiding. But they did not live in despair. For 30 years they had watched. They had learned. They had built. And they had planned. Admiral Marcus Chen stood before the assembled crowd in Omega's central chamber. At 72, he was one of the few who remembered Earth as more than just stories told to children born in the darkness of the outpost. The scars on his face from the Battle of Earth had faded, but the fire in his eyes burned as brightly as ever. Today marks 30 years since Earth fell, he began, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. 30 years of hiding. 30 years of watching the Keldari spread across our galaxy like a cancer. 30 years of building, planning, preparing. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the faces before him. Today, that waiting ends. Behind him, the massive hangar doors slowly opened, revealing the fruits of 3 decades of secret labor. 7 ships, sleek and deadly, their hulls gleaming with a material that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Unlike the blocky, utilitarian designs of old Earth vessels, these were predatory, aggressive in form. Project Phoenix, Chen announced proudly. The Keldari think they're invincible because no one has ever been able to penetrate their shields or evade their sensors. That changes now. Dr. Ilara Vega stepped forward, the chief scientist of the project. The Caldari use a quantum-phased energy matrix for both offensive and defensive systems, she explained. We'd spent decades studying the residual radiation patterns from their attacks, and we found something they never expected, a resonance frequency that can disrupt their entire energy system. In simpler terms, Chen added, we've found their weakness, and these ships are designed to exploit it. The first ship, the Nemesis, would launch that night. Its mission was simple: strike a Caldari outpost in the Ta City system, destroy it completely, and return without being detected. It would be humanity's first blow against the Dominion, the first step toward reclaiming their place among the stars. Captain Samira Khatri, chosen to command the Nemesis, stood at attention as Chen approached her. At 35, she had been born on Outpost Omega. She had never seen Earth, never felt the warmth of a sun on her skin. Her entire life had been preparation for this moment. The fate of our species rests on your shoulders, Captain, Chen said softly. If you succeed, we strike again, harder and faster. If you fail, he didn't need to finish the sentence. If she failed, the Caldari would find Omega, and humanity's last ember would be extinguished forever. I won't fail, sir, Khatri replied, her voice steady. The Nemesis will return victorious. 6 hours later, the Nemesis slipped silently out of the asteroid's hidden hangar. Its revolutionary engines left no energy signature, its hull absorbed rather than reflected scanner pulses. It was, for all practical purposes, a ghost ship, unseen and unseeable. The journey to Ta City took 3 days. The Caldari outpost there was small, a monitoring station with a crew of perhaps 200, guarded by 3 patrol ships. It wasn't a strategically significant target, but it wasn't meant to be. This was a test, a proof of concept. The Nemesis arrived at the edge of the system and paused, its sensors gathering data. The Caldari followed predictable patterns, their confidence in their technological superiority making them complacent. The patrol ships maintained regular routes, leaving gaps in their coverage that the Nemesis could exploit. Captain Khatri gave the order, and the ghost ship slipped between the patrol routes, approaching the station from its blind side. At point-blank range, the Nemesis revealed itself, powering up its main weapon, the resonance cannon. The beam that lanced out from the human vessel wasn't particularly bright or visually impressive. It simply connected with the Caldari station and resonated. The station's shields, which had withstood direct hits from the most powerful conventional weapons without faltering, simply collapsed. The energy surge fed back through the station's systems, turning its own power grid into a weapon against it. The station didn't explode so much as it disintegrated, coming apart from within as its molecular bonds were disrupted by the resonance cascade. It took less than 30 seconds. One moment, a Caldari outpost stood in the darkness of space. The next, there was nothing but an expanding cloud of particles. The patrol ships, alerted to the sudden loss of the station, turned to investigate. But the Nemesis was already gone, vanished back into the void, leaving no trace of its passage except for the destruction it had wrought. As the Nemesis made its way back to Outpost Omega, the news of the attack spread across the galaxy. At first, the Caldari attempted to suppress the information, but too many independent sources had recorded the event. A Caldari installation had been destroyed. Completely, utterly destroyed, and no one knew how or by whom. For the subjugated species of the galaxy, it was a spark of hope in the darkness. Someone had struck a blow against the invincible Dominion. In the Great Hall of the Caldari High Command on their homeworld of Keldar Prime, Supreme Commander Thrazik faced his council. For the first time in living memory, there was unease in the chamber. How is this possible? Thrazik demanded, his usually smooth voice ragged with anger. Who dares to attack the Dominion? Fleet Admiral Zorax, responsible for the sector that included Ta City, stood rigidly at attention. The station's final transmission contained no useful data. Supreme Commander, whatever weapon was used, it bypassed our shields completely. There was no warning, no chance to respond. Could it be the Conquerors remnant? Another council member suggested, referring to the scattered survivors of the galactic Concorde who had fled to the outer reaches of the galaxy. Zorax shook his head. They lack both the technology and the boldness for such an attack. Frezik's eyes narrowed. Find who did this, he ordered. Find them, and make an example of them that will echo across the stars for 1,000 years. What the Caldari didn't know, couldn't possibly imagine, was that the species they had thought extinct 30 years ago had not only survived, but had spent those years studying them, learning their weaknesses, and preparing for a war of vengeance. Humanity had returned to the stars, and this time they weren't fighting for survival. They were fighting for retribution. When the Nemesis returned to Outpost Omega, the celebrations were subdued but profound. The mission had been a complete success. The resonance cannon had worked exactly as designed, and the ship had returned undetected. More importantly, the Caldari were now aware that they were vulnerable. Admiral Chen didn't waste time savoring the victory. Within hours of the Nemesis' return, he had ordered the launch of the remaining 6 Phoenix ships. Each had a different target, spread across Caldari space. This time, they wouldn't just destroy outposts. They would strike military installations, shipyards, command centers. The message needed to be clear. Humanity had returned, and the Caldari would pay for what they had done to Earth. The fire of retribution. For the first time in 3 centuries, fear crept through the halls of the Caldari High Command. 6 more attacks had followed the destruction of the Ta City outpost, each targeting a significant Caldari installation, each using the same mysterious weapon that bypassed their shields as if they didn't exist. 18 warships, 3 shipyards, and 2 major command centers had been reduced to dust, along with thousands of Caldari personnel. Supreme Commander Thrazik had never known defeat. Born into a society that had conquered half the galaxy before he drew his first breath, he had spent his life overseeing the expansion of an empire that seemed destined to rule all of creation. Now, as he stood before the High Council, he felt something unfamiliar: doubt. The attacks show a pattern, Fleet Admiral Zorax reported, his voice carefully controlled. The targets are specifically military in nature. Civilian installations have been deliberately avoided. You sound like you admire these terrorists, Frezik growled. I respect a dangerous enemy, Zorax corrected. And whoever these attackers are, they are dangerously intelligent. Each strike has been precisely calculated for maximum strategic impact with minimal resources. Do we have any indication of who they are? Asked Council Elder Mavari, the oldest and most respected member of the High Command. We have a theory, Zorax said hesitantly. Analysis of the attack patterns, combined with the targeting data, suggests a personal motivation. These aren't random strikes. They're methodical, focused on weakening our control over a specific region of space. He paused. A region that once belonged to a species we believed extinct. The humans. Thrazik's voice was incredulous. Impossible. We razed their homeworld. We hunted down their colonies one by one. Yet the attacks began on the 30th anniversary of Earth's fall, Zorax pointed out. And they focused on installations in or near former human space. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If it is the humans, Mavari said at last, then we face an enemy with nothing to lose. A dangerous position indeed. Meanwhile, aboard the Phoenix Fleet flagship Retribution, Commander Elena Voss was planning the next phase of humanity's war against the Caldari. At 42, Voss had established herself as one of the most brilliant tactical minds in what remained of humanity. Where Admiral Chen provided the strategic vision and political leadership, Voss was the sword's edge, the one who turned plans into victories. The Caldari are adapting, she informed her gathered captains. They've begun randomizing patrol routes, implementing new sensor protocols. They're learning. Does that mean the resonance cannon will lose effectiveness? Asked Captain Katri of the Nemesis. Not at all, Voss replied with a cold smile. it means they're scared, and fear makes them predictable in new ways. The next phase of the plan was more ambitious than anything they had attempted so far. While the Phoenix ships had been striking Caldari targets, other human operatives had been making contact with resistance movements on worlds conquered by the Dominion. Many species, seeing the sudden vulnerability of their oppressors, had begun to rise up. "We're not alone anymore," Voss explained. "The Nyx Collective has pledged their stealth technology to our cause. The Solarian engineers are studying the resonance cannon to help us refine it further. Even the Vexillians, who have not fought a war in 10,000 years, have offered their support." A coalition was forming, not just of humans, but of all the species who had suffered under Caldari rule. And at its heart was the human drive for vengeance, the unquenchable fire that had kept them alive and focused during 30 years of hiding and planning. The true masterstroke of Voss's plan, however, was yet to come. While the Phoenix ships had been drawing Caldari attention with their attacks, a small infiltration team had managed to penetrate the defenses of the Dominion's flagship, the inevitable Conquest. Their mission wasn't to destroy the ship but to extract data from its central computer core, specifically the quantum resonance frequencies of the Caldari homeworld's planetary shield. The team was led by Major Derek Zhang, a former Special Forces operative who had escaped Earth's fall by sheer luck. His deep space training mission had put him beyond the reach of the initial attack. Now, as he led his squad through the dimly lit corridors of the massive Caldari vessel, that luck would be tested again. "Security protocols shifting," whispered Lieutenant Anya Petrova, their tech specialist. "We have 4 minutes before the next patrol." Zhang nodded. They had studied Caldari ship layouts for years, using data collected from destroyed vessels and the few spies they had managed to place in Dominion territory. The inevitable Conquest followed the standard design. The central computer core would be 3 levels down, near the ship's power center. The infiltration team moved silently through the ship, their adaptive camouflage suits bending light around them, making them nearly invisible to both sensors and the naked eye. It was a technology they had developed specifically for this mission, one more advantage the Caldari didn't know they possessed. They reached the computer core without incident, and Petrova went to work, connecting her specialized interface to the alien system. The Caldari language had been another focus of study during the long years of exile. They could now read it fluently, though speaking it remained difficult due to physiological differences. "I'm in," Petrova announced after several tense minutes. "Downloading shield frequencies now." That was when the alarm sounded. "We've been detected," Zhang stated calmly. "Petrova, how much longer?" 90 seconds for a complete download. "You have 60. Everyone else, defensive positions." The team moved with practiced efficiency, taking up positions around the computer core. They had known this might happen. The infiltration was always the riskiest part of the plan. But they needed those frequencies, or the next phase couldn't proceed. The first Caldari security team rounded the corner just as Petrova disconnected her interface. "Got it. Fall back to extraction point," Zhang ordered. "Delayed detonation on the charges." They had planted explosives throughout this section of the ship, not enough to destroy the inevitable Conquest, but enough to create confusion and cover their escape. As they retreated toward the hangar where their stealth shuttle waited, Zhang activated the detonator. 30 seconds later, a series of explosions rocked the massive ship. Against all odds, the team made it back to their shuttle and escaped during the chaos. The mission was a success. They had the shield frequencies of Keldar Prime. The path to the Caldari homeworld was now open. Back at Outpost Omega, now serving as the headquarters for the growing coalition against the Dominion, Admiral Chen and Commander Voss reviewed the next phase of their plan. "With these frequencies, we can target their planetary shield directly," Voss explained. "One precisely calculated resonance pulse, and their entire defense system will collapse. But getting close enough to deliver that pulse will be nearly impossible," Chen pointed out. "They'll have their entire fleet protecting the homeworld now." "That's why we're not going to attack Keldar Prime directly," Voss replied. "Not yet. First, we draw their fleet away." The plan was audacious, while the coalition forces launched a major offensive at Proxima Centauri, the site of a critical Keldari shipyard. A single Phoenix ship would slip through to Keldar Prime and deliver the resonance pulse that would disable the planetary shield. It wasn't meant to destroy the planet. Humanity had not fallen so far as to become like their enemies, but to force a surrender by demonstrating that nowhere, not even their homeworld, was safe from the resonance cannon. The Battle of Proxima Centauri began 3 days later. The coalition fleet, a mix of Phoenix ships, Nyx stealth vessels, Solarian cruisers, and ships from a dozen other species, engaged the Keldari Defense Force in what appeared to be a full-scale assault on the shipyard. The Keldari, believing this to be the main thrust of the Resistance's strategy, committed their reserves to the battle. Meanwhile, the Phoenix ship Redemption, under the command of Captain Lian Wei, approached Keldar Prime through a series of precisely calculated micro-jumps, using the resonance frequencies to remain undetected by the planetary defense grid. "We're in position," Wei reported, her ship hovering just outside the effective range of the Keldari orbital weapons, resonance cannon charged and ready. "Proceed, Captain," came Admiral Chen's voice over the secure channel. "Remember, this is not about destruction. It's about sending a message." The Redemption fired a single concentrated pulse at the exact frequency they had extracted from the inevitable conquest. The beam struck the planetary shield, invisible under normal circumstances, but now illuminated by the resonance effect, a shimmering dome covering the entire planet. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like glass cracking under stress, the shield began to fracture. Lines of energy spread across its surface, intersecting and multiplying until the entire structure simply dissolved. For the first time in recorded history, Keldar Prime was defenseless. In the High Command Chamber, Supreme Commander Thrazek watched in disbelief as the shield, the impenetrable barrier that had protected their homeworld for millennia, vanished. Outside, millions of Keldari citizens looked up at the sky in terror, seeing the stars clearly for the first time in their lives without the faint distortion of the shield. A transmission cut through all Keldari communication channels. On screens across the planet, the face of Admiral Marcus Chen appeared. An old human, scared and stern. "People of Keldar," he began, "I am Admiral Marcus Chen of Earth, a world your forces destroyed 30 years ago. Your shield is down. Your fleet is engaged elsewhere. Your homeworld lies at our mercy." He paused. "But unlike you, we do not destroy worlds. We do not erase species. That is your way, not ours." The transmission shifted to show the Redemption, its resonance cannon powered down. "We could have fired on your cities. We could have done to you what you did to countless others. Instead, we offer you a choice. Surrender and face justice for your crimes against sentient beings, or continue this war and face the consequences." In the silence that followed, the Keldari High Command faced a reality they had never imagined possible: defeat. At Proxima Centauri, news of the shield's collapse reached the Keldari fleet in the midst of battle. Supreme Fleet Commander Zorax, watching his forces being systematically outmaneuvered by the coalition, made the decision that would change the course of galactic history. "All ships, stand down," he ordered. "Cease fire immediately." The Battle of Proxima Centauri ended not with the destruction of either force, but with the first Keldari surrender in 300 years. In the days that followed, representatives from all the species affected by Keldari aggression gathered on a neutral station in the Alpha Centauri system. The negotiations were long and often heated. The Keldari, stripped of their technological advantages and facing the combined might of a galaxy they had terrorized for centuries, had little choice but to accept the terms offered. The Dominion was dissolved. Reparations were ordered for the worlds they had devastated. A new galactic council was formed, with humans, once thought extinct, taking a leading role alongside the other survivors of Keldari aggression. Admiral Chen, standing before the assembled delegates as the treaty was signed, reflected on the long journey from the ashes of Earth to this moment of triumph. Humanity had nearly been extinguished, reduced to a few thousand souls hiding in darkness. Now they stood at the center of a new galactic order, not as conquerors like the Caldari had been, but as leaders who understood the true cost of war and the value of resilience. "We return to the stars not as victims seeking shelter," he told the assembly, "but as survivors bringing wisdom bought at terrible cost. The galaxy will not know peace through dominance, as the Caldari believed, but through cooperation and the recognition that diversity, of species, of thought, of approach, is our greatest strength against the darkness of space." As he spoke, the Phoenix ships orbited silently above the station, a reminder that humanity had risen from its own ashes, tempered by fire, stronger than before. They had faced extinction and emerged not broken but transformed, carrying with them the lesson that even the most powerful empire could fall if it awakened the right enemy. The stars belonged to no single species now, and humanity would ensure it stayed that way.